there, I'm Christine Dunbar from speechmodification.com, and this is my Smart American Accent training. In this video, we'll look at the words bedding and bedding. We'll talk about flap T and flap D and help you to pronounce these words smoothly and easily in your everyday speech. So you may have already noticed that when I said bedding and bedding, you can't hear any difference between these two words. That's because a typical pattern for American English is that when we have a T or D in the middle of a word, we often use a flap to say that sound. I often call this flap T because where people have more trouble with it is when there is a T sound. Often we naturally will say the flap when we have a D in the middle. It sounds more like a D, the flap is voiced, and so if you think of saying a D, you may be able to accurately say your flap in any case. So to do that, let's start with the word bedding, and we'll talk about what's happening there. So in bedding, I have first syllable stress, vowel eh, like in red. So you can use a word like red or bed to help you get that vowel if you have some trouble with it. You can also look at our Sounds of English course and learn all of the different vowel sounds, what letter E typically says. It is most commonly an eh sound in a stressed syllable. And then in the dictionary, it's going to show a D for bedding. It's spelled with D. It shows a D here. The way it's pronounced is typically not a strong D. So here's the difference. If I said the word ding, I would close off the air for the D, build up pressure, and then burst it out. Ding, ding. It's a strong sound. The air completely stops and then comes out. But in bedding, I don't use that true D the same that I would in just the word ding because I don't block the air. So my voice is on, my tongue goes to that position that it does for the D, but instead of stopping, building up a lot of pressure and coming out like duh, it just is a light up and down, bedding, bedding. You already probably naturally do this. If you notice that you sound a little less than fluent when there's a D in the middle of a word, for example, a word like middle or bedding, if it sounds more like bedding, middle, you're probably using a true D there rather than a flap. So you can use my videos for flap T and for words with D in the middle to help you develop that flap sound. For most people, just thinking of a light, easy D, you'll be able to get it correct in these words. So then when we go to bedding, you'll see that the dictionary here shows a T, even though we say both of them with a flap sound. So that's because the word can be said betting with a true aspirated T, but that sounds more like the British dialects of English and English spoken elsewhere. In American English, our accent is to use the same flap sound for this T. You might be able to find a dictionary for American English that'll show a little symbol like this that means flap T. There's also a symbol for flap. I believe it's this one that's kind of like an upside down R. I've talked about how the flap is used for an R in some other languages. So for example, in Spanish, for the R, like in a word like pero, they do the flap there. It's like one roll of a rolled R. But not to confuse the matters here, we in American English never use that for R. We just use it for T and D in the middle of words, and also sometimes when we're linking T at the ends of words. So both of them will sound like bedding, bedding. The only time there might be a slight difference is generally if I'm saying just the words bet and bed. The vowel will be a little longer in bed because the D is voiced versus bet. In bedding, I think that doesn't really make much of a difference because the first syllable is long and the second syllable is short. So thank you for this request. It's kind of complex for fairly straightforward words, but probably what you noticed is that when you hear Americans using these words, it sounds the same and it's hard to distinguish. Of course, context will tell you. He's betting on a horse. I got new bedding for my bedroom. Clearly, these words aren't confusing in terms of when you use them in a true sentence. But knowing that typically these words with TTING, also TTER, like better and letter, that we use those flaps, that can be helpful in understanding how your speech may differ from the American accent, and just listening and understanding to native speakers when they're speaking in American English. So thank you for this request. If you have a request you'd like me to cover in our Word of the Day series, do feel free to leave that in the comments for this video or any of my videos. I'll add it to my list to cover in a future class. You can also attend our Friday live question and answer classes. Type your questions in the chat and I'll answer them for you live. Thanks so much to those of you who have subscribed to the channel. And if you haven't yet, you might want to do that because my content will then show up in your homepage and you can browse through. You can also turn on notifications if you'd like to know when I've uploaded a new video or when I'm live. Thanks everyone for your support and looking forward to seeing you in our next class. I'm Christine Dunbar from SpeechModification.com. Remember, if you want to sound like a native speaker, you can do it. SpeechModification.com. Bye everyone. Hope to see you again soon.